There is a rising difficulty in sitting without distractions, even for a short period of time. Many people report the need to stay busy, to reach for a device, to plan or check something, even when the environment is calm and nothing urgent is happening. The inability to remain physically and mentally still has become a common experience that is often misinterpreted as a lack of discipline or motivation. The actual causes of this behavior are not superficial. They can be traced to very specific physiological, psychological, and cultural developments that affect how the brain and body respond to inactivity. The state of discomfort that arises in stillness is not random, but built through repeated reinforcement and learned associations. In this video, I will explain why many individuals currently find stillness difficult to tolerate. Each section provides a precise breakdown of the processes, patterns, and internal responses that lead to restlessness during quiet moments. 1. Your nervous system is addicted to stimulation. The human nervous system has a natural response pattern that adjusts based on repeated exposure. When a person is consistently surrounded by noise, movement, and fragmented attention, the nervous system begins to adapt by maintaining a state of heightened alertness. This adjustment is not based on choice, but on repeated feedback that teaches the body to expect stimulation. In this adjusted state, the body prepares for constant input by increasing sensitivity to external triggers. The absence of stimulation becomes uncomfortable because it falls outside the range the nervous system has learned to tolerate. Instead of interpreting silence as recovery, the system begins to treat it as abnormal and responds with tension or discomfort. As this cycle continues over time, stimulation becomes the default condition, and any deviation from it, such as sitting still without input, creates a mismatch between expectation and reality. This mismatch explains why the body remains uneasy when no clear source of distraction is present. 2. You were taught that rest equals laziness. In many environments, rest is only framed as appropriate after visible effort or achievement. This framework conditions people to associate stillness with guilt or inadequacy. When rest is presented as something that must be earned, it loses its function as a natural part of mental and physical balance. This belief system causes an internal response whenever stillness occurs. Instead of relaxing, a person may begin to feel the need to justify the pause, often experiencing unease or internal pressure to resume activity. These responses are not based on present needs, but on previously learned associations that treat stillness as avoidance or failure. Over time, these repeated interpretations weaken the link between stillness and recovery. The absence of motion no longer triggers relaxation because the body anticipates judgment. As a result, being still produces discomfort, not because of actual danger or urgency, but because of internalized values around productivity. 3. Dopamine loops have rewired your focus. Modern digital platforms deliver brief but frequent rewards in the form of visual feedback, updates, or notifications. Each interaction triggers a release of dopamine, which reinforces the behavior by marking it as rewarding. The brain then begins to favor short bursts of stimulation over extended focus or calm reflection. This adjustment is not subtle. It directly changes the brain's preference for fast feedback and reduces tolerance for delay. Stillness offers no immediate reinforcement, and the absence of feedback leads to restlessness, not because something is wrong, but because the brain is waiting for a reward signal that does not arrive. As the cycle repeats, sustained attention becomes less comfortable, and silent moments feel empty rather than peaceful. The result is a preference for constant engagement and a reduced capacity to remain centered without external input. This is a chemical response shaped by habit, not a psychological flaw. 4. Constant movement feels like control, but it's just avoidance. When a person engages in constant activity, the sense of control is often increased. Making plans, moving from task to task, and staying physically or mentally occupied creates the appearance of structure. However, this structure may not come from intentional action. It often emerges as a response to avoid internal discomfort. Stillness removes the distractions that normally absorb attention. When those distractions disappear, the contents of thought and feeling become more noticeable. If those contents are unresolved, uncomfortable, or unfamiliar, the discomfort may grow quickly. Activity becomes a tool to maintain distance from those internal responses. The repetition of this pattern builds a preference for motion, not because movement offers true resolution, but because it blocks contact with what lies beneath the surface. The discomfort associated with stillness often has more to do with what is uncovered than with the absence of stimulation itself. 5. You fear what will rise in the silence. In quiet moments, a person may begin to notice emotional responses, physical sensations, or unresolved thoughts that are normally masked by distractions. These experiences can include vague discomfort, sadness, tension, or unfamiliar feelings that do not have a clear source. Because they appear when stimulation decreases, silence becomes associated with discomfort. This process is not imaginary. It reflects the nervous system's shift in attention. When external input stops, internal awareness increases. Without preparation or practice, this shift may feel invasive or overwhelming, especially if difficult emotions have not been processed over time. The result is a cycle where silence is avoided because it seems to bring discomfort, even though the silence is not the cause. It simply creates the conditions where previously ignored signals become visible. These signals are not harmful in themselves, but they can be misinterpreted as threats if no space has been created for them before. 6. Your mind mistakes stillness for danger. Hypervigilance is a condition where the mind and body remain alert even in the absence of threat. This state often develops in response to prolonged stress, unpredictability, or unresolved conflict. When a person spends long periods in this state, the body treats activation as the safest condition and perceives rest as a vulnerability. Stillness reduces external monitoring, which hypervigilance interprets as risk. This response continues until the nervous system is retrained to recognize safety without constant awareness. Until then, quiet and inactivity produce tension because they do not match the body's conditioned understanding of what is secure. This pattern is often invisible in daily life because it disguises itself as productivity, responsibility, or awareness. But the underlying mechanism is not efficiency, it is fear. That fear reduces the ability to remain still, not because of weakness, but because the nervous system has equated rest with exposure. 7. You were trained to perform, not be. When identity becomes linked to output, stillness becomes difficult to experience without discomfort. From early development, many individuals are praised, validated, or acknowledged only in relation to what they produce. In that environment, being without doing is interpreted as having no value. This training shapes how a person evaluates quiet moments. If stillness does not produce an external result, it may be experienced as loss, failure, or irrelevance. The absence of performance feels like the absence of presence. The person feels disconnected from recognition, not because others have withdrawn, but because worth was never taught to exist without action. These associations make it difficult to stay still, not because movement is necessary, but because stillness lacks identity reinforcement. Until this conditioning is challenged, any pause in activity may result in internal discomfort, even in the absence of actual consequences. 8. Stillness makes you feel powerless, because that's when truth creeps in. When distraction is removed, unresolved observations begin to take shape. These may include recognition of habits, choices, or conditions that have gone unaddressed. The process does not involve sudden realizations, but a gradual awareness that emerges in the absence of competing input. Stillness does not generate these realizations. It creates the quiet needed for them to become noticeable. Because these truths are often subtle and persistent, they do not trigger strong emotional reactions. Instead, they generate slow discomfort that can be difficult to tolerate without understanding its origin. People avoid stillness when they anticipate internal recognition that contradicts their current beliefs or behaviors. The silence reveals observations that have been ignored, and those observations often require attention or change. The avoidance of stillness becomes a way to delay those moments of recognition. 9. You're not broken. You're overstimulated. The inability to stay still does not reflect a personal flaw or a missing trait. It reflects repeated input that has taught the nervous system to expect continuous engagement. This overstimulation makes stillness unfamiliar, which causes the body to respond with restlessness. That restlessness is not a signal to act. It is a sign that the body has not yet adapted to the absence of input. In that state, discomfort arises not because rest is harmful, but because the body has become used to being constantly activated. Stillness can become more accessible when overstimulation is reduced gradually, and awareness is developed over time. The response is not fixed, and it does not require perfection. It requires a clear understanding that discomfort in stillness does not mean something is wrong. It only means the system needs time to learn a new rhythm. If you have made it this far, let us know what you think in the comment section below. For more interesting topics, make sure you watch the recommended video that you see on the screen right now. Thanks for watching.